Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm going to be going over my observations of the commencements for Harvard that took place this year. I was there. They have like a 2-week kind of activity that's taking place in Cambridge. The first week is a lot of alumni activities, or for the new grads. Some activities are taking place at the Harvard Club in Boston, a lot of activities in the yard, different tents, different lectures. So there's a lot of activity that's taking place for that 2 weeks of commencement. So some of the activities even start the weekend before, but I ended up going to Boston. It was I think the first event was May 21st. I think it was the 21st or the 20th. I think it was May 21st. So you have like these different alumni events based on the school that you go to, right? So there are 12 different schools within Harvard University, like HMS, HLS, HES, the dental school, the design school. So there's a lot of different schools within the university, right? And each one kind of has some activities that are unique for that particular school. So I'm from HES, so we had on our first day, I think it was May 21st, and a breakfast, right? So we meet in the tent. There's a big tent, and it's after you register. There's this big tent, and we're having breakfast, and you're talking to your classmates, meet new people, and in this tent are previous grads and then new grads, and then we're shepherded right in for a 3-hour lecture on. It was pretty cool, actually. The 3-hour lecture was on demographics in the world and specifically in the United States, about how real estate will change because of the declining population, and how AI or other technologies may be changing the landscape of real estate. It was literally like, this lecture was a little bit more on the business side of things, but it was dealing with demographics. It was a demographic kind of lecture, but I would put that into the kind of the business school kind of lecture. But it was a free. Well, we had to pay tickets for the alumni event, so it's not really free, but it was a comprehensive 3-hour lecture about how demographics will change the real estate landscape, and coupling it with artificial intelligence and robotics. So, like, for example, robotics is going to be really important in terms of geriatric care. But there are some nefarious things that can happen. Something that may seem positive at the very beginning turns out to be negative for the job market. So there's a declining population in a lot of these developed nations, like Japan, like the United States, like Europe, or even in the United States, I think we're slightly increasing. But majority of the growth in these developed nations is because of immigration, not really because of creation of new children, right? So it was a really cool lecture. And then after that, we have lunch in the tent, right? So we have lunch in the tent. And then people could break out and listen to other lectures in different areas of the university on that first day. And then later that day, we met up for a night cruise, an early evening cruise in the harbor. And then we had hors d'oeuvres and alcohol and dinner for that event. Then there was a hiatus on the 22nd, I think it was. And so, you know, I was pretty much focused on studying because I kind of had to balance my studies for medical school. But, and then I think that day I went to the club. I think on the 22nd I went to the Boston club and had dinner in what they call the club pub, which is downstairs. So that basically, you know, you buy a beer, right? Or, you know, and then you get free wings and cheese and bread and, you know, bar food, you know, for free, really. Then on the 23rd, that was the Annenberg dinner. And what was cool about that, many things are cool about that. Many people don't get to eat in Annenberg. This is kind of like the Harry Potter place, right? Where people eat. So as a student, you can eat there. It's a cafeteria kind of style as a student, and you can eat as much as you want. So, because my coursework during my time at Harvard, you know, because I was traveling, at this time I was working on my pre-med at Fordham and doing my master's at Harvard. So I was traveling back and forth on the bus system or the Amtrak system. You know, sometimes I would have a schedule where it was like Monday, and Wednesday maybe Fordham, Tuesday, Thursdays maybe Harvard. So I was going back and forth constantly to do this dual program that I was working on. But, so I was able to spend some time in Annenberg and have lunch there. And what's interesting is you see like the football players coming into Annenberg during the semester, and they would be basically, you know, eating like horses, because it's unlimited food for, you know, I don't know, like $12 or something like that. There was a similar cafeteria style, but a little bit smaller. But I think it was actually better at Fordham. But the ambiance of Annenberg is pretty cool. The whole building and the paintings and the wood carvings and the stained glass and the high arch vaulted ceiling, and it's pretty cool to be in there. So I think that was my third or fourth time being in Annenberg. But that was the first time that I was there for not the buffet, but they had a very elegant sit-down plate dinner, you know. So, you know, I think it was goat cheese salad, and the main course was a slow-cooked shoulder beef. It was probably the best beef I've ever tasted. It was very slow cooked, and it was very tender, very, very tender. And it just kind of broke apart very easily. Some meat, if it's not properly aged and properly marinated and cooked, it's a little tough. But this was just kind of like broke apart because it was so slow cooked, right? And then afterwards, I think it was lemon meringue pie or something like that for the dessert, something like that. But it was pretty cool. You know, you meet your classmates, you talk. You know, it's a really neat event, right? And then on the 24th, there was another hiatus, so I studied. And then on the 25th was the commencements. Now, during this time, you know, there's a lot of activity going on campus. Lots of people, I mean, hotels are booked, lots of people are walking around, you know, and it's kind of a communal thing that lasts for like 2 weeks, right? There was additional alumni activities after the commencements that I participated in, I participated for the activities that were on June 2nd, but there were activities that were on June 1st that I just didn't have time for. So, I traveled back to New York after the commencements. But, you meet people all over the spectrum, people that are in research, people that are teaching, people that are in finance, people that are retired already, people that are just starting their career. It's a really neat kind of annual event to kind of participate in, to be a part of this community. All right, so it's one of the benefits of being an alumnus from Harvard University. So on the commencements were May 25th, and so what is called when you are a grad of that year, which I was not. I was last year's graduating class. So I graduated from Harvard in 2022. But when you're an alumnus, you can get free tickets to the morning exercise. But if you're a grad, backtrack. Before the 25th, on the 24th, I also had lunch with some friends that were from Harvard. Some of them graduated with me in 2022. Some graduated before us, and some were graduating in 2023. So these friends that were sitting with us in Boston, we had 2023 grads, not so many, maybe 4 or 5. There were 3 of us that were from 2022, which is my graduating class. And then there was one individual that was, I believe, from 2015. So it was kind of cool. It was, it was kind of cool to see this kind of arc. So the 2023 individuals that were sitting at the table that we were eating at the Boston Club were asking what is it going to be like during commencement day? Because this was the 24th, and the next day was going to be commencements for them. So we were explaining to them, once you have your regala, you got to make sure you wake up early. You got to get to, your staging area. You're going to be waiting for a long time in the morning. You'll get some breakfast, and then you wait for the PhDs to be shepherded in with the bagpipes, and then you follow the PhDs. And then you stage in the old yard, and then, you're waiting and waiting and waiting for each of the schools to get shepherded in to the main theater area, and then eventually their school will get shepherded in, and then after that, then the college comes in through the different houses. So I think there are 12 houses within the college, and then they sit based on house, and then the whole commencement starts. It's a really cool thing to be a part of as a grad, but it's kind of cool to actually sit back and kind of look at this a year later and see other people going through it. So where I was, because I had free tickets as an alumnus, I was able to sit in the theater area while they were doing this commencement. So I saw Tom Hanks and all the different guest speakers, right? And where I was sitting was on the right side of the library. So there's lots of seats, but most of those seats are for students that were in that theater area in the yard. And then there are back seats for family members or alumni. Some people sit on the steps of the library that's facing the podium. I was on the right side of the library looking towards the podium. They have these big screens so people that are a little bit farther out can still see what's going on in the yard. There were about 33,000 people there. So it's a big event, right? But let's go back to the Annenberg event. So on the 23rd in the evening, there's this banquet, all right? I don't know how many people were there. I would say it seemed like there were about 500, maybe more. I don't know, it was hard to tell. But it was packed. It was definitely packed. But I mean, I think there's about 500 people there. I mean, it could have been more. Maybe it was closer to 900. But either way, I mean, there was a lot of people there. And they had different people called up. So you have the president. So this event was actually an HES alumni event. And so the president of the association, the Alumni Association, was speaking, and then they were giving out different awards. Some of them were military awards for contributions to, to society, what they were doing after their military tenure. But they had the guest speaker, and that was Tom Nicholas. And Tom Nicholas, and I've talked about Tom Nicholas before in other videos, but I didn't realize that he was retiring in 2023. So this was his retirement speech at Annenberg. And he's a famous professor dealing more with kind of geopolitics, Cold War strategy. He's written kind of books about sociology, and I think his probably most famous book, at least in contemporary times, is Death of the Expert. I have some issues with some of his points of view. He used to be a Republican, then went Democrat. He was definitely anti-Trump, and I think that it skewed his kind of his message because he was so anti-Trump. But he was definitely kind of a Cold War hawk kind of guy, right? Taught at the War College, and pretty famous guy, all right? Pretty established and well known. I thought he lived in the Cambridge area. He actually lives in Long Island, New York, and he was traveling back and forth, very similar to how I was traveling, going, just traveling from New York, get to Boston and come back, right? So that's a unique feature if you live in the Wash corridor. You can travel between Boston and Washington, D.C., and New York, Washington, D.C., New York, Boston pretty easily through the mass transit system. So he gets up there, he gets his award, he does his speech, and it was pretty touching. He was basically saying he's been teaching for so many decades, and it was time to stop, and what he learned from the students, and it was a special moment that I didn't know that I would be a part of. I did not know, no one knew that he was going to do his retirement speech, and we knew he was going to speak, but he spoke events all the time, and he's well known, so maybe he would have talked about what was going on in Ukraine. No one knew but it was going to be his retirement speech, and being a part of that, even though I may not agree with everything he says, is another one of those serendipitous moments that have happened in my over 50-year arc of life, where a lot of things have happened that I crossed paths with just by accident. All right, so it was pretty cool to see Nicholas, Professor Nicholas, talk about his arc of career, and him winding down, and him retiring from teaching. He looks still pretty vibrant. He's not this old decrepit guy, right? So he looks like he had many years left to teach. So maybe he was tired of the traveling, but maybe he's got some sort of gig that's going on with the military. I don't know. He's kind of a consultant kind of type. So maybe that's what's going on. I don't know what he's going to be doing after his retirement. But I suspect that he'll probably write books and maybe consult, with the Pentagon or with maybe the administrations that especially as we transition through what's going on in Ukraine and what's possibly going to go on with Taiwan and China. He's going to be a key figure, I think, in terms of perspective. So it was cool to see him speak, right? And then, of course, the president of the association, of the Alumni Association, made some jokes about Tom Hanks and the volleyball. I forgot the name. I don't even remember the name of the movie. I didn't see it, but it's when Tom Hanks is on an island and he's talking to a volleyball, and he named the volleyball, and they kind of had a mock volleyball on the podium, and they were saying, well, because this was on the 23rd, everyone thought that Tom Hanks was going to talk on the 23rd. He's going to be talking on the 25th, and sorry, but you're going to have to deal with this volleyball. It's a big joke kind of thing. And then the head of the association, the Alumni Association for us, it was stepping down, and a whole new crop of elected officials are going to, start their tenure. So it was kind of cool to see. The food was good. You stayed there the whole night, and it was cool. It was cool. All right, fast forward to May 25th. This is when the commencements happen. So basically, as an alumnus, you get a ticket and they buzz you in. It's all barcoded and name. There was this one I think was barcoded, and then you get this order of exercise booklet, right? And you can kind of see this is the May 25th, 2023. I saved my 2022 one, the year that I graduated. So basically, it's what happens. There's the academic. I'll read this through really quickly. The academic procession. This is the lining up, and then you're proceeding into the theater area. The meeting call to order, which is really cool. He speaks really loud, and I call to order, and at the end, he says, it's adjourned, and the way they accentuate it is a tradition. So that's pretty cool. And then, there's the anthem, the Star Spangled Banner anthem. Then there's a prayer that is done by the chaplain, and then the anthem. And then the president will welcome. So what also is really important during this commencement is Picau was retiring. So this is another serendipitous moment. When I started Harvard, it was Faust. And then Picau becomes president. So Faust was the first female president. And then she retires. Picau comes in, and then, he's retiring now. So I was able to see this kind of like transition between Faust and Picau, and then as an alumnus to see the actual retirement of Picau. So that was pretty cool. Then they do a Latin speech, and then there's a senior address, and then there's a graduate address. Now, what's important about the senior address was talking about enzymes. It was kind of too scientific and lofty. People were tuning out. There is a tradition during the commencements where one of the speeches is spoken by, I believe, an undergrad graduate. All right. in Latin. The whole speech is in Latin. So we have an English version of it, and then you read along. There's the print of Latin and the print of the English translation of his speech. That's pretty cool, even though no one knows what he's saying, but when you're reading the story, it's pretty cool. The graduate speech, I didn't like. She was actually from Michigan, and you know, she was telling her story about how she was shot and how she might not be able to graduate. She had to learn how to walk again and all this. All right, fine, okay, I get that. But some of these students, not all, but some of these students promote a very woke agenda, right? So it's not about the graduating and, you know, moving forward with life. It's always some sort of like trying to, promote some sort of an agenda, which I think taints the whole ambiance of the commencements. So she was one of those types. She was obviously from the Kennedy School, so you know, they always like pushing the agendas. What I noticed, Kennedy School's pushing, the educational system's pushing, and some of the undergrads are, you know, really pushing this kind of woke agenda. Threads of Joy, which was another anthem that was said. Then they do the conferring of the different degrees, right? You know, which is a long process because there's so many different schools and different degrees that need to be conferred. Then they do another anthem, and then another conferring of degrees, and then another anthem, and another conferring of degrees, but this time it's the honorary degrees. And so there's about 5 different honorary degree holders that they call up and talk about what they did with society and why they are honoring them. One of the 5 is Tom Hanks. So again, serendipitous, you know, paths cross. Never thought I'd ever be in the same area as Tom Hanks in my whole life. And it was a special moment, even though, you know, a lot of his movies aren't that good, but some are really good. Let me give you an example. I think Saving Private Ryan was one of his best work. Philadelphia, I think, was extremely good and important at the time that it was released, which was during this whole AIDS and HIV issue that was going on in the United States. I don't know if he won an Academy Award for Philadelphia. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, I don't know. But those two were really good. As a director, and maybe even a producer, I think what he did with the Band of Brothers series was excellent. So I think he has an eye, and he has a certain skill set that when all the cylinders are hitting, he does really well. There's other movies that I just don't, I never was really into Big, I think it came out in the 80s. And some of his other movies, this beach ball movie thing, whatever it was called, I didn't like that much. I did like the one that he was in where he's the captain and I think there was Somali pirates that take over the ship. I remember seeing this in the movie theater, when it was released. I thought that was good, but it didn't take a whole lot of acting. It was more action kind of thing. But I think his work in Saving Private Ryan and in Philadelphia were his best works. Now he does have a new movie coming out, Atomic something or other. It's out in the desert. I believe this is like during the whole 1950 Cold War bomb testing thing that's going on, but I haven't seen it. So they do the conferring of those honorary degrees, and then there's the commencement address by Tom Hanks. So I think that it would be nice to...
It's not fair.
Maybe to play it.
But please don't be in...
To play it. So I saw this. I was in the theater there, on the right side of the library, near the back. But it was kind of a special moment to see. Now, my interpretation of his speech, compared to others, that's important, compared to others. Many people that speak at that podium promote a very socialistic agenda. During my graduation last year, for 2022, it was the New Zealand Prime Minister. She was so woke and so antithetical to a constitutional republic that I did a speech about it, in a recording and put it on the internet. My critique of her speech. I thought it was way too woke, and and then obviously a year later she gets kicked out of her office in New Zealand, and now she ends up being some sort of fellow at Harvard, pushing woke agenda. But in the context, when you compare them, Hanks is far more centrist when you compare the other speakers and their woke agenda. All right, so keep that in mind. In addition, and I'll do another video on this, one of the honorary doctorates was Dr. Cottrell. And I already did a video with Trey Knight about this, very short, but I'm gonna go into detail. But she is the real inventor of messenger RNA. And I'll explain to you why it's so important that her work is causing a negative externality in terms of vaccine safety, all right? But Cottrell was an honorary degree holder with Tom Hanks for this commencement, for the 2023 commencement. So I saw her get her degree and talk. And if you dive into her research and you understand that she set up a company in 2006 to 2013 and then ends up being part of BioNTech, and then eventually ends up getting a teachership, a professorship over at the University of Pennsylvania, which also has come up within this whole crisis. You start to see a larger picture that is happening, especially with what was going on in Barrick's lab between 2006 and 2013. All right, I'll go into a lot more detail about why this is so important and why Malone is small fry compared to Dr. Cottrell. But what is more important for this video is Tom Hanks' speech. So I'm going to play it, and then hopefully you can type along. Hopefully this video stays up on YouTube. Maybe it won't, I don't know. But I will try to keep it up. And keep in mind that the people that go to that podium are far, far more woke than he is. Like 100 times more woke. So he's a little bit more of a centrist when you do compare and contrast. So please listen.
Now listen. It's not fair, but please don't be embittered by this fact that without having done a lick of work, without having spent any time in class, without once walking into that library, in order to have anything to do with the graduating class of Harvard, its faculty, or its distinguished alumni, I make a damn good living playing someone who did. It's the way of the world, kids. on behalf of all of us who studied for 2 years at Chabot Community College in Hayward, California, two semesters at California State University, Sacramento, and for 45 years at the School of Hard Knocks, earning a Bachelor of Arts degree in one damn thing after another. Thank you. I do not, thank you. I don't know much about Latin. I have no real passion for enzymes. And public global policy is something I scan in the newspaper just before I do the Wordle. And yet here I am, closing for Josiah, Palace, and Vic. Thank you, guys. Some of us here can recite by repetition the preamble to a television show we might have seen 5 days a week about a strange being from another planet with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men, Superman, who, disguised as a mild-mannered reporter for a great metropolitan newspaper — there were many metropolitan newspapers once, and some of them were great — who could change the course of mighty rivers and bend steel with his bare hands. He was faster than a speeding bullet. He was more powerful than a locomotive, and he was able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. And those are very, very impressive superpowers. No? Well, what was most impressive about his powers was how he chose to wield them. Yeah. Cats were saved from trees, and evildoers were banished to the Phantom Zone, and the innocent were rescued with reliable and assuring regularity. But in those half hours, which have since grown to many full-length films and multiverses, and God, you kids see them all, was the ongoing struggle for not just the protection and safety of the world, but too the exposing of crooks and their lives to the light of day. Superman, you see, and his proxies of Wonder Woman and Captain America and Black Panther and the Black Widow and the Fantastic Four. My God, there's a million of them. They are all enmeshed in that never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way. And in such a struggle, being a Superman is a plus, even with his one lethal weakness: exposure to chunks of the wreckage of his home planet destroyed by its own hubris and apathy. But hey, there ain't no Superman nor anyone else in his Justice League. There's just us on this planet. Now, on occasions such as this, beware of certain orators who resort to using sage quotations from historical figures, or the words and legends of literature and arts, or the name-dropping of famous friends as a claim to some kind of wisdom or super ability. Some people standing at this podium shouldn't be considered much more than lucky sots who are in the right place at the right time with the right goods and the right attitude. Or, as a man named Marlon Brando once said to me, Vic, would you pick up that name I just dropped? Marlon Brando, would you hold on to it till we're done? Thank you. Give it back to me at the end. I'm going to need it back. Yes, as a man named Marlon Brando once said to me on a message he left on my telephone answering machine, Tommy, handkerchief, this is Marlon Brandflakes calling you to ask where you are. Then later, he told me that when he was a young man and registered for the draft, he filled out the form for his name and age, but when it came to his race, he wrote human. For Tommy, what are we all but human? Yeah, we are all but human. Now, as an armchair historian who reads nonfiction for pleasure, the books divine that there has never been a graduating class that has not faced the greatest challenges of all time. That come every spring, the maelstrom of history swirls so wildly that no matter the year or the era or the generation, there is always an atmospheric river of events that makes right now the hinge upon which our fate is turning. And we here in the stands look at you all in the caps and the gowns, and we hope, oh, at last help is on the way. Somewhere matriculating today is a man of iron, a woman of steel, a superhuman just in the nick of time. Now, this is not because we have failed in our duties or are completely spent. We have done some very super things over our generations. It's because we are all in a cage match, mixed martial arts battle royale with agents of hubris, apathy, intolerance, and braying incompetence, the malevolent equals to Imperial stormtroopers Lex Luthor and Loki. And we could all use a superhero right now. Now, looking out at the flowing colors of Harvard Yard, the goofy big hands that clapped, the balls that represent the world on which we live, the streamers and the piatas, and someone's very big face rendered large out there amongst the, there she is, that's it, that's it. We see beings who are young and restless, with energy and imagination, with righteousness and enlightenment and joy and compassion. And we celebrate your proclaimed wisdom and your worth ethic. We know no one is faster than a speeding bullet, to our shame, every day, to our shame. But we can still summon more power than a locomotive, and we are able to leap tall buildings at a single bound if we have the right gizmo. We can change the course of mighty rivers, if such a thing should be done. And we make machines that bend steel as easily as using our bare hands. And we know that to each other we often seem like strange beings from another planet, in habits and tastes and languages, with holidays and foods we eat, and names of the days of the week, all varying. We all have special powers and abilities far beyond the reach of other mortals. Some of us can repair a screen door with ease. Some of us can take care of a 5-year-old kid and a toddler for 24 hours a day and never stop loving them. Some of us make sense of physics and economics and global policy. Some of us survive somehow on minimum earnings. Some of us graduate from college despite years of lockdowns and Zooms. And these achievements are all stellar, even though, yes, we are all but human. Still, we'd like to look up in the sky and see not a bird, not a plane, but, well, someone who is young and strong and super, who will fight the never-ending battle for truth, for justice, and for the American way. Someone who will take on that work. Now, all right. Now, a kooky uncle once said to me, we should all stay in school as long as we can because the moment we graduate, we have to work every day for the rest of our lives. Now, that uncle was, you know, a bit bitter, but he was not wrong. We all get to complain about the man, and we all have debts we gotta pay. And we're all entitled to a day off to lay about. But the work that is called for, that we must do, has no expiration date. It is the construction of our more perfect union. And that job job will never, ever be completed. It's one that requires rigorous attention, unfading wherewithal, and all hands. The work is the keeping of the promises of our promised land, the practice of decency, the protection of freedom, and the promotion of liberty for all, with no exceptions. And man, that takes on a lot of work. It's work that is done on multiple job sites every single day, and you can call each of them the battle for truth, justice, and the American way. Yes, the American way. The American way is exampled in both plain sight and in subtle attitude. It's in moments of routine exchange and in broad expectations. It's in places of historic weight and import and in the small spaces in which we all stand. The American way can be exampled when you respect the law and the rights of all, because if you don't, who will? When your food is brought to you and you thank the server, because if you don't, who will? When you pick up the litter that has missed the recycling bin, because if you don't, who will? When you vote your conscience and make sure your neighbor has the opportunity to do the same with theirs, because if you don't, who will? When you make good on your victories and learn from your losses, because both are the results of proud and noble efforts. If you don't, who will? The American way was first proposed not far from here, when subjects of a king demanded more control over their lives than that dictated by someone else's definition of providence. At the same time, women had no legal recourses. An entire segment of the population had been taken from their homeland and enslaved to work as chattel regardless of their age. And the original inhabitants of this continent, from sea to shining sea, the only ones who carried the DNA of America, were considered subhuman. Yet even with such paradox was written down the how-to. How to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure those blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity, no matter as time and conflict and the institutions of our democracy would determine our gender, our race, our creed, our color, our chosen deities, or who we love. For it is our manifest destiny to pursue our own happiness. All of us, no exceptions, are entitled to the inalienable rights of liberty and freedom because we live in the United States of America. The vocabulary of the American way, of the law and the rights we share, is some part philosophical musing, some part answering a question with a question, some part trying to bowl us all over with your knowledge of Latin. Some part answering the question with a question, and the rest is all practical. It's even physical, and it's certainly tangible. It's the language of telling the truth. What is truth again in Latin? Veritas. The language of telling the truth. It is in the vision quest for truth that we look to you newly incorporated members of the Justice League of Avengers to come to the rescue. For the truth to some is no longer empirical, it's no longer based on data, nor common sense, nor even common decency. Telling the truth is no longer the benchmark for public service. It's no longer the salve to our fears or the guide to our actions. Truth is now considered malleable by opinion and by zero-sum endgames. Imagery is manufactured with audacity, with purpose to achieve the primal task of marring the truth with mock logic, to achieve with fake expertise, with false sincerity, with phrases like, I'm just saying, or I'm just asking, I'm just wondering. Now literally Surely you cannot believe your eyes, and your ears will help others lie to you. Someone will report the world to you exactly as you wish it were, full of alternative facts, of conjured narrative meant to buttress the status quo and deny its offenses, or rejig the rules and muddy the playing field depending on where one is on the food chain and the moral spectrum. The American way can be demonstrated without ceasing as a perpetual prayer by every big shot and any plain Jane or Joe Blow. Justice can be an everyday pursuit, case by case, with both lightning speed and the slow, inevitable effect of gravity. Truth, though, truth. Truth feeds up in the high country, as elusive as serenity, yet as certain as the North Star and the Southern Cross. Truth is mined at the intersections of our chosen behaviors and our fixed habits, in our personal boundaries. Truth has synonyms such as honesty, honor, transparency, and yet the common practice of so many is to play fast and loose with those very words, to create enemies, to claim victimhood, to raise the mediocre into merit, and to make cloudy a vista that is actually crystal clear. Likewise, truth has opposites. Omission. You don't need to know that. Distraction. That's not the real story. This is. Opinion masquerading as clairvoyance. Oh, here's what is going to happen. And influence peddling. You know, a lot of people are saying. Truth, too, has a nemesis equal to any colored kryptonite that, like a feral hound, is never too far off the path in the weeds and in the shadows, lying in wait for the lethal opportunity to bring truth down. And that beast is indifference, which will make moot all the permanence found in truth. Indifference will rust away the promise of our promised land. Propaganda and bald-faced lies will erode over time. Idolatry and imagery lose luster and effect. Ignorance and intolerance can be replaced by experience in the wink of an eye, but indifference will narrow the vision of America's people and make dim the light of Lady Liberty's symbolic torch. Indifference makes citizens into indentured servants held in labor by the despots and tyrants whose default setting is cynicism, who outlaw dissent and ban art and dialogue and books, who grab power any way they can, enabled by the subterfuge of their co-conspirators, rewarding the rationale of the complicit, and surging into the vacuum caused by the indifference of a people who have been made weary by struggle, so weary that they lose hope and are left to yearn to be saved by the fiction of superheroes. Every day, every year, and for every graduating class, there is a choice to be made. It's the same option for all grown-ups who have to decide to be one of three types of Americans. Those who embrace liberty and freedom for all. Those who won't, or those who are indifferent. Only the first do the work of creating a more perfect union, a nation indivisible. The others get in the way. In the never-ending battle you have all officially joined as of today, the difference is in how truly you believe and in how vociferously you promote and how tightly you hold to the truth that is self-evident, that of course we are all created equally, yet differently. And of course, we are all in this together. If we do the work, justice and the American way are within our grasp, no matter our gender, our faith, our station, our heritage or genetic makeup, the shade and hue of our flesh, or the continental birthplace of our ancestors. Why is that truth so hard for some to accept, much less respect? If you live in the United States of America, the responsibility is yours, ours. The effort is optional. But the truth is sacred, unalterable, chiseled into the stone of the foundation of our republic. All of us are able. None of us are super. We are the Americans. Liberty and justice is for us all. Because yes, we have specific names, and we have lived every year of our ages. But when it comes to race, we are all uniquely, magnificently, simply human. Or so said Marlon Brando to Tommy Tommy Handkerchief. May goodness and mercy follow you all the days of your lives. Godspeed. Congratulations.
So that was the commencement for 2023. And when you compare that speech, which was relatively short compared to others, but if you compare that speech with the one that I attended in 2022, which was for my graduation, which was the New Zealand Prime Minister, she was so woke and so condescending that she was speaking to only a section of society. Now, I just want to be brief on my interpretation of Tom Hanks's speech. All right. The United States of America has a lot of challenges, and everyone knows how, through listening to my channel, how I feel as though where the United States gets off the rails, especially with the national security state and all the problems that happen within this whole military industrialized complex that you add in biology too. It gets really scary, right? And that wokeism is trying to destroy the fabric of the nation. And wokeism is trying to destroy the fabric of the family unit, right? And that is a major challenge. It gets muddied when you start talking about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. When you have individuals that are promoting agendas to destroying the very fabric of society that goes to the very beginnings of the human race, it causes negative externalities. And that there needs to be a forceful stopping of this agenda that is eroding these family units and of the society. But individuals that may not want families for whatever reason, or are prefer to be associated differently in their sexuality or whatever, should be protected by the Constitution. The problem is when that lifestyle is promoted in the media, promoted by corporations, promoted within the society. For example, the problems that we're seeing with ESG ratings of companies. to be able to be qualified to be part of some sort of ETF fund, or to be able to be qualified to be able to be in an investment for certain portfolios, it has to have a certain ESG rating. Well, if you don't have, some sort of socially responsible rating, then your company will not be funded. So investors are pushing CEOs to making decisions that they may not necessarily want to do. This is not, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is a mechanism to force feed an agenda on the other side of the population. If most people just said, leave me alone, and there wasn't all this promotion of whatever, let's say, take for example, religion. If people were just left alone to observe their religion the way they want, all right, or not to have a religion, let's say atheism or agnosticism, right, and just people were left alone, that is a more perfect union than one side, either the atheists or the other side, the religious, forcing their particular perspective. When that is happening, that is against life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Take it with, this whole transgender movement that's happening in the elementary schools. There is nothing wrong with individuals out there that have, maybe some sort of gender dysphoria, all right? And maybe they need to be helped, maybe they, but it shouldn't be promoted. And there's the problem, is the promotion of this. So you have this wokeism that is trying to disrupt capitalism, disrupt the family unit, disrupt the religious fabric of the country. And even, I would even take it to the point where probably even the Protestant worth ethic that is famous in America, what made America great, is its worth ethic, right? It's basically based on this idea, the Protestant worth ethic, but this worth ethic that has been around since the beginnings of this nation is starting to erode. And so when wokeism attacks the economics, attacks the biology, attacks the family unit, attacks the other social pillars, then the foundation that Tom Hanks is talking about starts to erode, starts to crumble. So I think, in a nutshell, when you compare Tom Hanks' speech with the other woke individuals out there that have spoke at that podium on that day or other years, his speech was far more centrist. And that we as a nation need to uphold the constitutional ideals that our founding fathers created for this nation. And it's, I think, to sum up his speech in a phrase, it was Bono, even though he's a little woke. But Bono, back in the 90s, had a phrase, it was on the one song. Basically, we are one, but we are not the same. We have to carry each other. That, in a nutshell, is what Tom Hanks' speech is. So, I was there. I thought it was a great speech. But we also have to stay vigilant and make sure that the national security state is eroded. We have to make sure that the family unit is protected. We have to make sure that our economic system isn't, attacked. by socialism. And, religious institutions can still flourish in, future generations, instead of this attack that is happening at the elementary school level. So, but we also have to realize that to move forward, we have to work together. That's what I get out of Tom Hanks' speech. So hopefully you learned something about Tom Hanks, a little bit about the country and where we're at, my perspective on, on wokeism, which I think is destroying this country. It's important to understand that there are investment houses that are pushing an agenda to have corporations promote these types of woke policies so they can get investments, to get an investment rating on the ESG rating. So, and then hopefully you learned a little bit about that whole week of activity that takes place in Cambridge during the commencements. And then I'll do another video. I'll do another video of Dr. Cottrell and why her research was so important, and what we need to do going forward with trying to understand the next phase of the post-crisis that we're in now. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to all my channels. I have 3 channels on YouTube. So all the links are in the description, so please subscribe to all those channels. Also subscribe to Bitchute, Brighteon, and Rumble. If you could, please subscribe to my Patreon account. That would help support my coverage of the news and all the different topics that I talk about. And also go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. All the links are in the description of all my videos, so you just click the link and it'll take you to everywhere. And please, go to that store and get the products that I offer. I have nano silvers, liquids and gels, soaps and lozenges. I have multivitamins. I have C60, which is a very strong antioxidant, in coconut and avocado. I have a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, and an 8 ounce. Partnered up with Boomer Products, so I have a plethora of different supplements like B-complex, turmeric, ashwagandha, resveratrol, zinc, magnesium, vitamin C, vitamin D3, lignans, digestive enzymes, collagen. I have a lot of different products to help you follow my protocol and boost up your health and improve your longevity and go through a healing process, slow down the aging process. If you do this on a regular basis by taking a strong antioxidant like C60, taking your supplements that I offer, and neutralize pathogens with the nanosilvers, you are going to fare very well in terms of slowing down that process and getting healthier. Make sure you drink filtered water. Don't drink fluorinated water. Also get proper diet and exercise, and it will go a long way in slowing down the aging process and getting your body in homeostasis. In addition, I also have deodorants that are all natural in citrus, and the other deodorant is in peppermint tea tree. So you can purchase your deodorants with all natural ingredients. And I also have a everything bar, which is great for skin irritations, wound healing, bug bites, muscle pain. And then you can also apply it on your skin on a regular basis, and it could be just a regular skincare product for you. I also have these different boxes on my store, what I call anti-aging boxes, and at different price points, and I've curated them in different ways where you can get a skincare anti-aging box, either beginners or advanced edition, or a beginner's edition for anti-aging, and or an advanced box, and that's all curated so you know exactly what to get to follow a protocol. Taking nano silver gel and putting it on your skin before you go to bed, taking collagen and taking vitamin C and drinking water and getting exercise, it will improve your skin within 7 days, 14 days. And if you continually do it, you'll notice that your body and your skin is healthier. I have an advanced box, the skincare advanced box, that also adds in the C60, which is a very strong antioxidant, and resveratrol. So, take a look at these products that I offer to help support my channel so I can inform you of my perspectives and what is going on. Just to give you an update, I did do a video last night of the particulates that are in the air in New York. And this morning, it's a little bit better, but it's still out there, but it's a little bit better than last night. It's supposedly going to get worse as the night progresses, but I was outside for only about 4 or 5 minutes. And when I came back in after the recording, I was starting to not feel right with my throat, all right? So what did I do? What I did was I took liquid nano silver, right, and I gargled it and then swallowed it. And then what I did was you take the nano silver gel. I took the nano silver gel and then put a little bit in my nostrils, and then I made a tea. I made a lemon tea. And I don't feel that kind of like that scratchy, irritated feeling in my throat like I did last night. So hopefully everything, I haven't been really outside at all today, but it's still kind of hazy out, but not as bad as last night. We'll see what happens when the different weather patterns happen, but I'll keep you updated on what's going on, at least in New York. I know other people have commented that around the United States that they're seeing similar things happening because of these fires and the wind patterns that are coming from Canada. So, but thank you for paying attention. Thank you for being a supporter of the channel. And please, go to the store and purchase the products that help you. If you can't purchase the products because of finances or because you're out of the United States, you could help support my work by being a Patreon subscriber or donating through Stripe or PayPal on my homepage on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe or PayPal, and that would help support my work. I am not monetized, and I was demonetized from YouTube 3 years ago for covering the stuff that I've been covering. I'll never be monetized on YouTube, but I think it's important. I'll do another video on this, but we need to kind of look at this whole truther movement, right? Who's real and who's not real in terms of wanting to inform the public versus wanting to inform the public, and it really has become more of a business for them, really. I think Malone falls in this category. I don't know, I think I should do a long video on Malone, probably parlay that with what's going on with Dr. Carrico, because Malone overplays what he said he did and underplays what he really did. So thank you for listening, and I will see you later.